Hello and welcome to the Rogers TV COVID-19 show. I'm Carol Merton, and before I welcome our guest to the program, I'd like to share a few thoughts with you. For those of you who watch the program regularly, you know I like to give a bit of an update on COVID-19 status in Grey Bruce. So today there continues to be good news. The provincial stay-at-home order has been lifted, and we are now in step one of the province's roadmap to reopen. However, restrictions do continue to apply. The vaccine rollout continues in many locations, including vaccine clinics, pharmacies, facilities, and in the homes of those who require this service. We have surpassed 121,415 doses administered in Grey Bruce. The Grey Bruce Health Unit could not have done this without us. They confirmed, though, that the Delta variant present in Grey Bruce is a variant of concern, as it is more transmissible. Both first and two-dose vaccinations are effective in reducing the hospitalization rates from the Delta variant. However, we are asked as a community by the health unit to continue to help the health unit, and so we can continue to reopen the province. We need to keep up the good work. They advise us that we must continue with the 3 W's and the 2 A's. Those consist of washing your hands frequently, watch your distance at least 6 feet apart, wear a face covering appropriately, which includes the nose, and the 2 A's, avoiding your crowds and arranging for outdoor activities whenever possible. This journey has been long, and we are all very, very wary. Continuing to remain vigilant will bring us all closer to the finish line and the end result of reopening Grey Bruce and Ontario. So let's continue to keep up the effort to make this difference together. Thank you to those in the community for all that you have done and continue to do to help move us through the COVID-19 pandemic. And on that note, I want to thank and welcome my guest today, Jill Paterson, who is the manager of the Grey Bruce Museum and Archives. Jill, thank you for being on the program today. And you're outside. You are following the A's.
Yes, thank you so much. Yeah, I thought I'd be creative and use an outdoor space in Morriston Heritage Village. So I'm here at the 1920s era farmhouse, and to be super safe, I'm out on the front porch, so you can see the gardens behind me and the sunshine coming in, the flowers and stuff. So it's just beautiful out here.
Well, I'm actually enjoying looking at it, and I'm thinking, okay, this is where I'm heading next, is outdoors. So.
Yes.
So thank you for being on the show. And I'm wondering if you can give us an overview on what's happened to Grey Bruce Museum and Archives over the pandemic, and what are your plans for reopening?
Well, it's been a whirlwind roller coaster of experiences. So the museum shut down along with businesses across the province, across the country in March of 2020. The staff at Grey Bruce were actually redeployed. Many of them went to work with long-term care homes.
Wow.
They worked on procuring and storing PPE. They worked with paramedics, and they were kind of supporting essential services at Grey County. And they did that for most of 2020. And then I actually just started as manager in April of 2020. So that was a really strange time to start a new job. But
My goodness.
yeah, so we were actually closed for the whole spring, summer season. And then we were able to open again in September of 2020. So we had a good fall season. We had a really nice Halloween experience out in our village, and that was really popular. So that's where I got to see us actually doing our normal work. And then unfortunately, there was the sort of second wave that happened over the Christmas break, and then we were closed again in January and are actually still closed right now. but it's a really good time to talk, Carol, because we're gearing up. So we're still closed to the public, but we're hoping that we can open our outdoor spaces a little bit for stage 2. And then by stage 3, we should be able to open our indoor spaces. So the main building and maybe the buildings out in the Heritage Village as well.
So, and I know you're going to share with us some programs that you're developing, but I've heard that businesses have pivoted, but Grey Root staff pivoted not just business, but their function. I mean, they actually did something totally different that wouldn't even fit within their normal day. That's remarkable.
Yeah, it was. I think they were all quite proud to be able to support and help in a time of crisis. So especially in long-term care homes where we were able to help residents connect with their families through digital media and help with the screening at the front door. And so I think, that was a really powerful experience for a lot of staff.
Excellent. But oh my goodness, you just jumped on board and you had to redefine your role.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. And, it was a lot of learning about things like creating timed tickets. So where Grey Roots would never have had limitations to the numbers of people, we want to see a crowded space, but not with COVID. So we created an online ticketing system. We made sure that we were never over our capacity, made sure we had lots of sanitation stations set up, and kind of made sure we had all the PPE that people might need and a screening system. And then after the Christmas break, we really did pivot to digital programming. So we created quite a few online exhibits and sort of virtual programs. So there are presentations online you can go check out right now. There's a virtual tour of the 1853 log cabin. There are really fun exhibits about there was one that was created for 2020 that was about eyesight and glasses and the technology over the years. And it was called Seeing is 2020 in 2020. So as you can see, it never really got to see the public in the way it should have, but we pushed it onto an online platform. So you can find that on our website. There's also a great exhibit called, let me check my notes, Surviving the Unthinkable Citizen Soldiers of Grey County. And it looks at, we did a big call out to the community to ask for photographs or stories of ancestors who had served in the First World War. Mm-hmm. And then we connected their sort of civilian life to their service life. And you can see that so many of them are just kids. And it's a really poignant, and it's a really good an exhibit. So check that out. But we're still thinking more about how we can do things digitally and without touching things. So one of the new things that we're developing for the village experience is an augmented reality tour through the village. So you would use your own cell phone, and there'd be 10 hotspots throughout the village. And it would be kind of like a scavenger hunt with like trivia and quizzes. It's supposed to be kind of like a fun new way to learn about the buildings and the history in the village. So that's being developed with a local company called KP9, who are really talented in this world of interactive and sort of immersive experiences. So yeah.
Can I ask you a question about the digital? What are you hearing back from the public now that you've gone virtual with some of your programs? What's the feedback you've been getting?
That's a great question. And, I'm such a fan of the old school, like smelling and tasting and hearing the real deal. But a really great success story is we did our archives lecture series online this past fall and spring. Mm-hmm. And an event that would usually get, say, 75 people ended up getting 500 people, 600 people, because it could reach, however many people could get online. And we were able to leave the presentations up for weeks at a time. So you would attract more and more people. So that's one of the examples of something that was really successful and maybe we should continue doing somehow in the future.
And that was going to be a question, from the
Yeah.
lessons learned, and also recognizing in Grey Bruce, we cope with many things, including weather in the winter. Is this something you may consider a mixed model of the in-person versus virtual in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm hearing from staff that there's always a challenge with schools and the buses and the, being accessible as in terms of price point and that kind of thing. So anything we can do to get our interpreters into the classroom in an easy way, I think we'll certainly explore in the future.
Excellent. Yeah. So we're heading into summer. Are you having activities for the kids in the summer?
Yes. So on top of the augmented reality project that should be really fun, we've also developed a program called Small Wander, which is a more traditional sort of story walk that goes through the village, and it's really for those little kids. So there's like a tidbit of historical information that goes with an activity. It's really good for the little tiny guys, and we're hoping that we'll be able to have interpreters out in the village sort of sharing the stories of the buildings, and then once we get into stage 3, we'll have a few new exhibits inside the building that I can tell you about. We're actually extending the period of Facing the Flames, which is an exhibit focused on firefighting in Grey County. It's been up since last year, but a lot of people have contacted us to say they didn't get a chance to see it and they would still like to. So that works for us. It's nice to be able to extend it. It actually won an award from the Ontario Museum Association for community engagement. And I think that really speaks to the passion of the firefighting community. They really got on board and shared artifacts and stories, and it's a really fascinating exhibit. And
that's so amazing.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
And then we're working on an exhibit about local business called Sign Everywhere Sign, which is a collection of local business signage throughout the decades. And I think that's a really nice sort of love letter to the important place that local business has in our community, especially as they've been so challenged over the last 15 months. Yeah. So it's a really fun exhibit. You'll see some great design examples and different kinds of signage. And I think people will recognize names, and I think that'll be really fun. They'll recognize businesses from their own past.
And what a great way to connect with the history, but also to connect with the community together. I mean, people have missed that so much in the pandemic. I mean, we've learned the value of community and community connections. Yes. So that will raise a lot of fond memories, I'm sure, for people. And also story sharing. I remember that store.
Yes. Well, we have this great sign. I'm afraid I can't remember what period it comes from, but it says it's the Manjuras Tobacco Store sign. And apparently it was like a pool hall. It was like quite a hub of activity. So I'm curious to see what stories we get about the Manjuras Tobacco sign.
Before we go on, how do you come up with these ideas? I mean, these are very unique, interesting ideas.
I have to give credit to Sim Salata, our curator here. I think she's just so aware of the collection, and as she gets donations and new pieces, she starts to see where there could be an exhibit pulled together. And I think that's where the bright ideas come from. And she's also pulling together a kind of a quirky little exhibit called our Shellaversary, because it's Greyroot's 17th anniversary. So the traditional gift for 17th is shell.
Oh, good.
So we're pulling together artifacts out of our collection, like little jewelry boxes and picture frames and anything that's been made with shell. So that'll be a fun exhibit as well.
So
Yeah.
there's lots of creativity that goes on in first deciding and then actually creating.
Yes.
It's an artistic skill when you think about it.
Yeah, it is. And I think the staff have been really, stretched, challenged. They've all had to think about how they usually deliver programming and figure out a new way to do it. For example, so we're not able to do kids camp this summer, which I know is a really popular program in the area. But our education coordinator, Laura Arnold, is putting together these activity kits that will be available for purchase in July and August. And each week there's sort of like a new hands-on kit that we can get out into the community. It corresponds with a virtual, like a little online video that tells you a little bit about a piece of our collection and shares a bit of history, and also teaches you how to do the activity. So I think she's had to be really creative to pull together these activity kits that I hope take off over the summer as well.
There'd be a lot of adults who might be interested in activity kits these days.
Yes, that's actually one of the points in her website copy, is to say that these are not just for kids. There's all age groups can enjoy these different kits. So yeah.
Yeah, so people can go online, see what the kit is, order it online, and then would they come and pick it up then, or how would that?
Yeah, that's the plan. It'll be sort of like a curbside pickup situation, but our website will have that all organized and in detail.
And that's great. I'm sure parents would be very grateful too, because oh my goodness, it's a challenge with children at home without school. So keeping them stimulated and having fun, it certainly is a great idea.
Yeah.
So what else is on your list? I can't peek. I can only.
That's okay. There's so much. I asked staff to just send me like what they're working on so I could share with you. And I realized there's just so much activity. Despite being closed, we have a lot in the works. One of the big projects that we're working on is a new build in the village. So we're actually proceeding with the build of a replica general store in the village, which has been many years coming, and we're really excited to actually break ground. I can tell you a little bit about that store. So it's going to be about 23 by 38 feet square, rectangle. It's a story and a half. It will also have a bit of an addition in the back where we can interpret a secondary business, which would have been sort of appropriate for the period. Maybe someone's, making barrels back there or some other kind of business. And then there'll be boardwalk around the front. So you can imagine that would be great for us as a space. You can, do programming or have a musician or who knows what. And we're hoping to use it as a place for special event demonstrations, education programming, and we're actually hoping to be able to sell something out of the general store. There seems to be a lot of interest in being able to actually purchase something. So whether that's local products or, things made by local artisans, local honey, candy, who knows? Yeah, that could be great.
So inside, other than the selling of the products, when you go inside the general store, what would the public see other than the sale product? How do you stock it to look like a general store?
Yes, that is going to be a really fun challenge, because if you can imagine what say like a turn of the century 1920s general store would look like, it's just like wall to wall products. There's shelves all up the side,
hanging from the ceiling.
Yes, and we're gonna spend a lot of time researching labels on cans that are period appropriate and how we create all of those products. And I know Sim is quite excited because the general store creates an opportunity to share so many more of the artifacts that are in our collection, because it should be jammed with stuff. So we are excited to pull some things out of collection, but then also there'll be some recreations that we have to make. And you could get everything in the general store, from produce to cleaning materials to fabric. Who knows? It was like the one-stop shop, right?
Yeah. So you'll be exploring your own museum artifacts to find out what, I bet you'll find things you would just be amazed at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. And
so,
yeah,
sorry.
Go ahead.
And so even in the pandemic, when things are closed and it's really tough, you're actually expanding by building a new build.
That's right. Yeah. The general store has been part of the sort of village plan for many, many years. But I think it's sort of a great tie-in right now with the development that's happening next door to Grey Roots in the coming years. There's going to be this regional agricultural demonstration site in the works. So how great to have this place where you can learn about agriculture and local producers, and then have a general store which can show how those products got out into the community, and we can kind of highlight those products.
Very exciting.
Yeah.
Very exciting. So if all goes well, you would think the general store would be ready by the fall, or is that too optimistic?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of a moving target. We do have every expectation that it'll get started this summer, but we're trying to be flexible with our timeline because it's a very unusual time for the construction industry, and it seems like they're so busy that there's a lot of delays in terms of like booking equipment and getting supplies. And so we are, we're gonna try to adapt to what's doable this summer, but our hope is that, at least we get started.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any special events planned? Are you, any celebrations when you open? Anything?
I think it will be a celebration just to have the public back here walking around. But yeah, I'm curious to see what kind of interest we get from people just as an outdoor experience. So I think for much of July, it might just be our outdoor space that we let people access. Mm-hmm. And I think hearing from other museums that were open last summer, they were actually quite busy with tourists. Mm-hmm. So we might find ourselves having a nice crowd of people here. And then once we reopen to the public, it's tricky to have events because you don't really want to encourage gathering. And if you want to make sure you're always following those protocols and regulations. But hopefully, being optimistic, we can have everything back to normal to do something like Morriston by candlelight at Christmas, which I know is so beloved in the community and sells out really fast. So I'm hoping, we might have to make some adjustments just to make sure it's extra safe, but I'm hoping we can kick that off again this year.
And, I think what you're describing gives people something to look forward to. We know about what being confined has done for mental health and physical health and just depression. Mm-hmm. And, just to know that there's hope moving forward, that the things you love, visiting the museum, seeing the exhibits, it gives people something to anticipate. And I think, and the staff too.
Yeah.
Do you, at Grey Roots, do you have volunteers that in the past you would use? And what are you hearing from your volunteers?
Yes, we have an incredible large group of like over 100 volunteers. And usually it's the volunteers that really animate the village every summer. They're in costume. They all have their sort of favorite building that they're experts on. They're so engaged. They love working on the gardens here. we're like really a special place for volunteerism in the area. Last year we were closed for the summer. We were closed for most of our opening season, but there were still a good chunk of volunteers that wanted to come back and help us out in the fall. So we were so grateful for their help. And this summer, they're ready to come back. They're ready to help us with the gardens. I think many of them are in an age group where they might have already had 2 vaccines, like had their 2 doses. So it's a really optimistic story. They're ready to get out again, and we're ready to have them back. So we're just sort of waiting for that stage 2. And I think we should have our volunteers helping us out again.
Yeah. So it's a win-win all the way around once they can come back.
Yeah, absolutely. We're very fortunate.
So what haven't I asked you that you'd like to really emphasize in the last couple of minutes in the program?
I think you're right that Grey Roots and the museum experience is quite a safe way to get out of your house, take in a natural space, take a deep breath. And we're always making sure that, we're limiting the number of people in the building. Everything's sanitized a couple times a day. We're following all of the regulations and the protocols around COVID safety. So I think, it's one of those spaces where there's lots of room to spread out on our site. So hopefully that encourages people to come back and visit us once we're able to open.
So lots on the go for sure.
Yeah.
And a year from now, what do you think Grey Roots will look like?
Oh, that is a great question. My idea of a successful museum is a busy, bustling museum with lots of people coming and going. And I hope that we're able to gather again in small groups so that we can do things like workshops and events. I'd love to see music in our village. I'd love to see education programs coming back and all of those kids traveling around the museum and learning and engaging, and also to be able to pull out some of our interactives again, so that people can have that hands-on sensory experience in the museum. So lots to look forward to. Our time is up. I have so enjoyed speaking with you and hearing about the plans for Grey Roots. I wish you all the best. Fingers crossed. Thank you.
More lockdowns. And thank you for being on the program.
My pleasure.
Thank you for joining us here on the COVID-19 program of Rogers TV. Please join us again to learn more about resources and services for you and for your family. Take care. Stay safe. Care for each other. Thank you.